Okay, folks, thank you for bearing with us. We've got it all working, more or less. So welcome to this Geotalk. It's a slightly different topic, but equally exciting this week. And today we have someone who's known to all of you, I think, even in the online audience, Robyn Symons, who is a fairly new staff member here, maybe less than a year. Just less than a year. And as you'll probably know, Robyn is both the curator in this department for our incredible collections, but also the geo-communicator. And you'll know because how good the branding around the school, or how the branding around the school has changed recently for the better. And that is all thanks to Robyn. So I think we should give her a round of applause. As you know, that makes a big difference, and it's very important for geosciences, and so we really appreciate all you're doing, Robyn. Robyn is a graduate from Stellenbosch University. That's where she got her honours degree. And she's currently doing a master's at the University of Edinburgh in science communication. So she's eminently qualified. And what she's going to talk about today is part of her MSc, right, in science communication. So it forms part of that, but it's also really important for the school and for outreach for geosciences at large in Southern Africa. So Robyn, over to you.
Thank you, everyone. Can you hear me? Perfect. So thank you for everyone for coming today. I'm so happy to share this design with you. It's going to basically be our concept and our hopes and dreams, but I really would value your feedback. So if you have any creative ideas or things you would like to see this mobile museum do in the future, please just tack them in the back of your mind and let me know at the end of the talk. So let's get started. So why do we want to have a mobile museum? Well, firstly, part of it is because as a cluster, we've set up a really incredible portfolio through the hard work of Dr. Ian McKay and a few others, even Matt Kitching, to do all of these public exhibitions. We were present at the Rand Show for a very long time, and that's an important legacy. We want to maintain that presence. But the team that ran that project is much smaller. So we need to optimize and make some tools for us to keep moving forward and keep on doing these public exhibitions at these various events. When I sent out my hopes and dreams into the world, I managed to get interest from a few conferences coming up. So I'm going to be taking this design to a lot of people around the world and getting feedback. We really want to make the best design we possibly can. And that requires asking a lot of people for help. But mobile museums in this day and age are taking on a different role because a lot of museums are located in like urban centers. We are struggling more and more with things like urban blight, the cost of transport, time, our aging infrastructure, which occasionally blows up. But all of these things limit the feet that come through our doors in terms of visitors to the university. So our museum spaces are going to suffer if we don't take our content and our collections to schools, to the public. And for that, we really need mobility. Mobile museums have actually been used for decades. I think they started really coming into their own like after the World War, when many museums really suffered in terms of damage. And so as a medium, they're very reliable. But since COVID-19, we found that there's a different use for them. So many museums have now gone online. I don't know if you've seen some of the beautiful digital spaces you can walk through, like the Louvre, you can go to the Picasso Museum. It's amazing what you can experience online. But those online and digitized museums don't bring the specimens to you. They don't have that tactile, interactive learning experience that a lot of young children particularly need. That they need to explore and touch and feel the specimens, and online exhibitions and digital museums don't do the same thing that a mobile museum could do in those situations. So we want to make a mobile museum that's more focused on that. We want to bring specimens to young people and let them touch, feel, and see the rocks for themselves and link it to their own context. We can take the museum to them and teach them about the geology in their own area, in their community, or teach them about the geohazards that affect their own communities or their school. We also have some specific needs at our university. We tend to do a lot of diverse exhibitions. So we have things like Yebo, which we have to set up for like a week and has to sit there. We have school visits, which could be one day. We have to pack up and put things down. So having something very flexible is very important. And I've tried to think of some creative ways we can reconfigure things quickly and pack things up quickly. But the aims of this is the interactive learning. That's number one. We really want to have lots of interactive features. Accessibility is the next step forward because our museum is completely inaccessible. I don't know if you've noticed the big glass doors, which are completely sealed off and shut to the world. But even in terms of accessibility for people who are differently enabled, you can't get wheelchairs down there. You can't touchy-feely anything. All of the light switches are at different levels. So we can play around with different accessibility features in our mobile museum and see how people with different needs could respond to them. Safety and preservation. We have had some worrying damage to specimens. So thinking about safe ways to put really incredible specimens on display would be a bonus. We don't just want to take out the specimens that we always take out for every public display that we know can take a bit of damage. We want to take out things which are really beautiful and really special, but then we have to think about how we keep them safe. And then again, the adaptability. We have a lot of complicated needs as a department. We tend to want to go different places. We might need to take this thing out to an ICDP drill site and do community engagement there. So it needs to be very, very mobile and very diverse. In terms of our outcomes, I want us to think a little bit about that as a department, what we want as an outcome, because different grades might want this. I mean, third years might want to have the mobile exhibition out in the field when they're doing field work so that we can bring some of the collection out and help them contextualize what they're seeing and learning on field school. So outcomes are what we want to use this museum for. But in the long term, we want it for interest in geology. And interest is the broad package of attitudes towards science. How do we want to improve attitudes towards geology? We can use it for that. We can use it to improve aspirations for geoscience careers. But interest is that kind of umbrella term. And then the emotional impact, we could use this to engage communities that are in distress. We can take it to sites that have been impacted by acid mine drainage and set up an exhibition and show them how to safely interact with contaminated water, or we could take them to a place where they've had an earthquake and put things on display that could help them react to a situation. We can use it as almost a way to interact with communities that have gone through something emotionally and be present in a space with them. It's also important for our scalability. We need something we can move a lot to a place and put a lot more on display. Just for our Yebohocha exhibition, that's a 2 or 3 worths of trolleys that go up and down campus, and it's exhausting. And that's not very scalable. You're very dependent on having lots of volunteers. We need a system that we can have, 4 people, we move everything, it's scalable. We can have 2 or 3 tables and it doesn't cost a lot of time and energy because we all have research. We're a very active department. We have other things to do. We need to really maximize and be more efficient. And then reaches how far we can take this to an ICDP site, we can take it to Barberton. We want it to be fairly robust in how we can, in terms of our geographic reach. And then again, protection of specimens. We want something that protects them, keeps them safe. I'm a curator, I like my rocks. And then feedback. This is something I've been toying with and I've been asking other curators about it. But we can use this to maybe get feedback for what sort of features we want in the big museum. So if we want to put in levers that have different densities, but putting that into the museum is expensive. And if they break after 2 weeks, we've lost a lot of money, but we could install it on this, do some user testing, work out if these sort of features actually reach the sort of learning outcomes we want for young people, and potentially then install some of these into the big museum. When we have a big museum, live and hope. One day. So let's move on to my design. Oh, yeah, it's working on the projector. So this is kind of what it would outpack to. So just in that little trailer, we could probably put 2 tables at least, a whole gazebo, so we can have a shaded area if we're working outside. We can put banner walls up. So if we had something like Rancho and we need to make a cubicle, we could put banner walls in it. And then we could have a full museum module with all of our interactive activities and things on it. I'll show that now. The space in this is actually quite important. We have almost 3 meters or so of long space, and I want to keep all 3 meters of that, because if we want to move something really special, like the animatronic dinosaurs, if anyone from ESI is listening, we could potentially pack a whole dinosaur in there. And oh, somebody's talking. Can you please mute yourself? Thank you. And it's a standard gauge trailer, so it's easy enough to move around with a 4x4 bucky, which we should have more of. So it has some degrees of movement. We can easily tow it around. This is the back. It's got a nice wide door, so we can put in a full module and wheelie it out from the back. This is our side profile. These are storage units. I'm still toying with the design a little bit, but we could put maybe 8 lug boxes of rocks in here. And these are the 40-liter lug boxes. So we could put another 4, 40-liter lug boxes of different activities, different specimens, and we could pad those and keep them quite safe. So this is the modules. This is what I've been painting after and designing with all sorts of joy. So I want to design one of these pull-out modules where we can have interactive activities on them and use that as a bit of discovery and explorative learning. I want things that kids can touch and pull and yank and do all the good stuff too. This is a lovely design I found by Eco Design Roadshow. It's on sustainable, I think, plastic use. And this is from the Tinker Educatorium. They have a beautiful room with all these different types of kind of access information. So you can see everything's hidden. Kids have to go there, pull it out, see it with their eyeballs, interact with it, and really incredible sort of tactile displays, but not unnecessary. It's not just like poke buttons and, it forces them to think strategically about how they want to access the information. And this is one of my previous pop-up exhibitions, which I really do love how it's on a trolley. It was very mobile, but it's all just stacked on top of each other and it's not secure enough to pull, tug, and have interactives on. But I really like this idea of having these boxes, because each box you could put its own thematic material in, you could put its own specimens in, they're quite secure. So I want to design something like that, a bit of a mix between the two with these types of boxes. And each box we can configure to what we want. So we can have something like a sound box, which just plays different sound files. And we can do things like have a tactile or a vibration pad there, and they can hear and feel what different types of seismic waves could be interpreted like, or different sounds that you could hear during an earthquake, or, different harmonic waves that you can kind of get when volcanoes are sort of being more active. We could put some really interesting sound design in there and get them to feel and experience different, geohazards or, geological experiences, or even like the sounds of what it feels and sounds like when you're underground, because that is quite unique experience in itself. And then, of course, we have our UV box, which we can make more compact and make it into a module. We can have those sort of pull-out README surfaces. Let's go over to the art. Art is always much more fun. So we could have these pull-out, surfaces where they can pull and read like an A4 page of information and see pictures. I love the idea of having these pull-out little boxes, because having small, delicate stuff on display on those tabletop exhibitions that we usually do for things like Geotalk, the little small stuff tends to disappear. And it's not so much theft, it's that little kids, they see small stuff, they grab it, and then it like goes flying. It's a hazard. So we tend to have really big, bulky things on display, but some of our mineral specimens that are really incredible are quite small, and it'd be nice to have a little secure, small spot for things like that. And the width of this would be, we could very comfortably put like an A0 poster here, but this is also all powered. So depending on budget, I could also potentially put some screens here and we can have digital content, but we have to weigh it up with how rugged we want the design to be. Printed content doesn't break, These are just some configurations, things that I sort of imagined in my head and sketched up. Like, for example, outdoor configurations, like if we were going to like Zoo Lake and we wanted to set up something there on the weekend, interact with the public, this could just all roll out of the trailer. We can set it up with the gazebos, have a nice space where people can walk around and interact. And then this would be, in the meantime, while we're waiting for our fancy new museum, we could put it out here in front of our museum and have a space where we can interact with schools, and then they can walk up and down and do the lab tour as well. we have this beautiful open space in front of our lab, so we could very easily put specimens in the display box that link to what we're currently doing in the labs. If we have like macro scale zircons, we can put them there. We can show them the different types of minerals that we date. We can make a post on how dating works. We can even put a post-it there explaining how the mass specs work. And so they can have a lovely like flow through the mass spec and see all the different labs and then come through and interact with these types of activities. Education plan is going to keep it flexible, but from what I saw at Yebohocha, kids don't tend to linger much more than 30 minutes in a space, even if they really, really like it. But we can maybe put something like, we can work on a workbook, something that guides them through touching and feeling, and they have to go find certain clues and link certain specimens to different learning outcomes. But we'll see. That's very dependent on, what types of schools we get in, what ages they are. We're not going to get 10-year-olds to sit and do a workbook. They probably just want to do activities. But we could supplement it with, like, if we want to do a 30-minute demonstration on how earthquakes work, we can keep it very flexible. And then I think we all know the topics of interest, but we could develop any of these topics within the scope of this exhibition. So if we want to just have something on basic rocks and minerals for a school, a teacher can come to us and say, well, we are struggling to get them to understand earthquakes or seismics or faulting and folding. We can do something purely tectonic and pack it out very quickly. And then this is what we would set up on the tables. So the tables are not just empty spaces. There's some really incredible activities that you can do that kind of illustrate the different geological events. Some of these should play. It's Windows, I forgive it. But we can set up these types of push-pull boxes where we can show them how faulting and folding occurs in different color sands. We can have these little shake tables. I don't know if you've ever tried this. You put sand water in with a brick. You shake it up and you can see how liquefaction happens and how foundations can shift during earthquakes. We can have spaghetti earthquakes. I don't know if you've ever tried this, but you can do different bunches of spaghettis and illustrate the force and the sound and the nature that comes out of breaking different bundles of spaghetti and equate it to how seismic waves are generated and the size of earthquakes and what it kind of means in terms of the type of rock that's being disturbed and how much rock is being disturbed. This is a lovely display that one of my friends sent me where they're tapping into critical resources and trying to get kids to think about, what is this made of? What is your phone made of? And bringing out the ore samples. This is what the motorbike is made out of. This is what your cell phone's made out of. And we have all of this. We have an incredible ore collection. So I'd be very excited to set something like this up and even make it a competition where they have to guess, what is your phone made out of? They have to try and get all the ingredients and put it together, and then it makes a phone. We can make some very fun games out of something like that. And our ore specimens are not as fragile as some of our mineral and our display specimens or the fossil specimens. We have a lot of, beautiful ore that we could potentially use for something like a more hands-on activity. And then I love these types of, pull cards that you can attach to your rocks, and it gives you these little bits of context about each specimen. So I'm thinking about developing something like that where it's almost like a game of snap. They have to go and find the specimen with the little snap card. Yeah, so that's all of my hopes and dreams. I hope you enjoyed it. Please let me know what you think.
Thank you, Robyn. That's absolutely incredible. And I think it's going to be an amazing resource for the school, but also for South Africa, because we need to make sure that more and more people understand what geoscientists do. So we've got some questions here and in the audience. Let's start with Karen, but I'd also like to hear from some of the students, because you guys were in the market for a degree a few years ago, right? And it's been nice to hear what would have inspired you when you were at school. But let's first speak to Karen.
Thank you very much, Robyn. That was great. It's nice to see the direction that we're headed in. What I was most excited about, obviously, was that space outside of the labs, because that's where I spend most of my time, and what the plans are for the eventual museum. But I realize that that is outside of the scope of this talk. But perhaps you could just say, for the people who don't know, kind of maybe what the timelines are and what our thinking is in terms of when we would have our permanent museum display. I mean, like, I realize maybe we don't have an answer, but maybe you can just give people some context for where we're headed.
So I think the permanent museum is probably at least a year or two away, depending on how complex you want the project to get. It's being entangled into redeveloping the whole side of the building. But I would really like to see that space at least cleaned out and restored and made semi-functional within a year or two. And then whether or not we take it into full renovation with the rest of the building, that it would be nice to have a functional space there for at least, students to access or have for events. It doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to work.
Thank you so much, Robyn, for the talk. It was beautiful. I just have I think 2 questions, if I can put it that way. So my first question is on the content of the museum, what will be on display in terms of the various aspects of geology. Also in terms of that, especially for the mobile museum, do you specifically decide on one event that we're going to talk about, let's say geophysics, or we're going to talk about paleontology now, or we're going to talk about, economic geology, etc. That's my first question as a whole. And then the second one is, how can students then contribute actively towards this particular activity of having a mobile museum? What do we do as students, and what are the incentives?
Okay. Well, to first question, I mean, volunteers are always appreciated. To the first question, it probably will be an event-to-event basis. I mean, sometimes we don't have much of a choice. Things like Geotalk, they'll give us a theme, and then it's nice to develop some slightly new content. We do tend to reuse, but nice to think about the theme and try and make it relevant and reinterpret what we've done. So it is event by event. It might be by school. So if they're sending us grade 3 to 4s, we know we can probably do, the rock cycle will fit in quite nicely there. Whether they're sending us grade 11s and 12s, something more career and mining focused, and how they can get into different careers in geoscience would be more appropriate. So it is event to event. In terms of what students can do, well, I'm hoping I can develop a template so that, and make that accessible. So if you don't want to do a Geotalk, but you have made a really incredible poster, for example, a conference, you could put your poster up there, and I can give you all the templates and how we can fill it in, fill the mobile exhibition in, and you can put your rocks on display. So you could present your own, your own research in the mobile museum at different events. So if you had a sponsor, we could put the mobile museum in GSSA's head office, if they have a head office, and display your research there for a week. So it should be quite accessible. Especially if it's printed or digital media, you can basically just send in a design and we can display it, or you can print it out and put it on that poster board. So it should be quite accessible to students to display. And I think it would also help with volunteering, because then I don't need to try and organize, 10 plus volunteers to help me lug everything across. We can have a dedicated team, and we can all kind of train and learn how to move it and put everything on display, and then we can focus on the people rather than trying to guard all the specimens all the time. We can rather be interpreters and teachers than, dragons guarding our gold.
Okay, any other questions in the room?
Thank you for the talk. I'm just curious because I have my younger siblings. So I want to know if maybe I'm interested in them having this kind of exposure. Do you approach the schools, or is there, I don't know, how do you go about reaching the target group that you're looking for?
It's a good question. It's likely we're going to work quite closely with Schools Liaison Office. They have an incredible schools list, and they know different teachers at different levels at those schools. So they can target specific teachers at a specific age group and ask them if they'd be interested in a visit. We have schools that reach out to us and ask us to do school visits. So it's nice to have something that we can take to them easily, instead of trying to bring our bucky full of rocks and hopefully set something up that's interesting. We can just take the module to the school. So we're slowly developing our own schools list. We also inherited a schools list from Dr. Ian McKay. So there's a few schools on that list that we can also try to approach and see if they'd be interested in a more geoscience focused display. But we will be developing our own in-house list, and then also be working with Schools Liaison to try to get to different schools.
Yeah, but like potentially if you know that your sister, like you would like your sister to have this kind of exposure, she could, you and her together can approach her school and say, Wits has this mobile display. Why don't you guys get in touch with them? They can do a school visit. So, I mean, you guys can also be proactive and engage with schools if you want Robyn and the mobile museum team to go visit them.
We can always do fancy marketing, print flyers and send them all out into the world.
Yeah, just on a related note, I don't know if anybody else on the NRF application wrote this, but there's like there's a section where it's like, what's my outreach going to be, and et cetera, et cetera. And Faith Nyati, she said she was going to go back to, well, I kind of told her that she should write this. So, but she said she was going to go back to a high school in Limpopo and do a presentation, and she hasn't done it yet. But you know, I think what Corin's saying is that, and the overall message for the students is that it'd be great if you guys could take initiative and try to form some of these links with some of these schools.
I thank you for the talk. It was amazing. My question is also still in the a follow-up, I guess. So how far does the mobile museum go? Because for like we from KZN and we don't really have a lot of access to these type of opportunities, right? I only found out about geology just from a former principal mentioning it to me. So I would also like that they get this kind of exposure. So how far does the mobile museum go? Does it go all over South Africa or just Gauteng?
I mean, there's a cost to transport, but it would be nice if we can be fully national. And then we used to present at the Grahamstown Science Festival, Africa Sci-Fest. So it'd be nice to be able to take the museum there once Africa Sci-Fest gets up and going again. We could potentially even, you know, switch places. Like if UCT wants to bring the mantle room up here, we can send down our mobile museum and we can put it in Cape Town. So it can be, you know, national. It's just we'd have to budget, you know, for having, you know, 1 or 2 national trips a year, just in terms of the petrol and the cost. But it can go wherever there's a highway, it can go.
We're going to come to the online audience now. I see 2 hands in the audience, but let's.
I'd like to know, would your focus actually be on the introduction to geology or just a reintroduction to geology? How would you actually just go above such barriers wherein the community doesn't know anything about geology or they have very little exposure?
But I mean, everybody has some exposure because it's difficult to miss the rocks that are under your feet. You don't have to frame it as geology, but everyone comes with a certain set of experiences and context. So it's nice to be able to take a mobile museum to a community and we can sort of remove all of the high theory and the geology, and we can focus on these rocks that you have seen. This is what they mean. This is where the water aquifer would be. This is how your community can use all of the rocks in the environment that you've been exposed to, and you can use their own context and their own experience that they have and sort of develop it into something a little bit more enriched with like geoscience. You don't have to break it down for them. Every time you go there and try it, this is the rock, this is the different types of rocks. We can use their own experiences to build up that knowledge base.
So no phase diagrams, right? And it's mobile.
No phase diagrams.
The second years are scarred currently by that. Let's hear from Lou online. Lou, can you unmute yourself?
Yep, I've done it. Okay, Robyn, very nice talk. You are a very articulate speaker, which of course you have to be in your line of work. I have 2 comments. One is regarding mobile museums. And I wonder if you're aware, some years ago that my late friend Martin de Wit had an idea to develop a mobile museum in a train car. And the train would drive all around the country, stopping in various places and getting students and young and old people to go in there and look at geology stuff. And I think they got quite a lot of funding, but it never came to be, and he died. And I wonder if you're aware of that, because they may have some terrific ideas. Martin was a very, very good ideas kind of a guy, and he would have had some terrific stuff in his proposed train car thing. So maybe make yourself aware of that. There are probably some still people who are living who worked on this. I'm not sure, but we could probably dig into it if you want to. I'll wait for your reply to that, and then I'll ask another question.
Yes, please. I'm always looking for South African or any case studies. A rail car would actually be a very interesting one because you have a lot more capacity and you can move things which are much heavier than we can in a trailer. So it'd be interesting to see what he had planned for a rail car.
Yeah, okay. And my next point is about permanent museums. And in Africa, of course, we have a serious problem with putting on display specimens that have any kind of value because of stealing. Now, you will be aware that in both the Wits Museum and the Africa, what do they call it? The Museum Africa, they had some horrific robberies in the past, and a lot of irreplaceable specimens were stolen, never recovered. And so, what do you do in Africa? You know, what can I say? This brings to mind what the British Museum will say. Look, we stole the Elgin marbles, but we're not giving them back to Greece because if they display it, it'll be stolen. You know, and they have this attitude with all kinds of things, including meteorites and stuff. You know, you may not be aware the British Museum owns a lot of South African meteorite specimens, probably other things too, which don't belong in London. Damn it, they belong down here. But how can we display them without the risk of them getting stolen? You know, so. What are your thoughts about this? It would cost a fortune to establish the type of security arrangements that you're going to need to protect really irreplaceable specimens. What do you think?
Well, most of that is Grant's problem. He's he's saving up a lot of money so that we can develop like a secure vault and a visible vault in our museum. So we want to push back one of the walls and have almost bulletproof a display there in the permanent museum. But that does cost a lot of money. But we're getting there slowly, bit by bit. But it really would be nice to have secure displays that we could put things like the hominid fossils on display and the meteorites on display, and know that we can leave them there and they won't disappear overnight. Even some of the gold, maybe at a push.
Diamonds,
maybe.
Yeah, there's a terrific diamond specimen that Wits owns. It shows a big, beautiful diamond sitting in a kimberlite matrix, and that's something that should be on display. It's a legacy of this country, and people should know about it.
Yeah, my favorite are always the green ones that come out of the Wits base, and those are really quite eerie to look at. And I'd love to put them on display, but they're small, they're difficult to show, they're very mobile, and can be moved quite easily.
We wrote a paper on those. Sue and me have a paper on those green diamonds. The only specimens that are available of those are in the Museum Africa, and they were very, very cautious about letting us have them. Eventually, we were able to get them to give us 3 of them, and we sliced them up and did all kind of fancy isotopes and stuff. But the green diamonds you're never going to get unless you steal them from the Museum Africa. Just to a final point is that I have a lot of stuff in my office that I am willing to donate to your museum efforts if you want them. They include a lot of meteorites. I have a lot of meteorites, and I have some really museum quality mineral specimens that maybe could or should be put on display. So you come to my office maybe next week when I'm in there on Thursday, and we can look through that if you like.
I'm on leave next week, but when I come back, I'll definitely go there because I want to also develop special storage for them and see if we can get some funding to keep them all safe and dehydrated and fun things like that.
Okay.
Thank you, Lou. Much appreciated. Let's hear from Stephanie.
Hi, Robyn. Thanks for such a great talk. Just two ideas which you've maybe had already. Maybe putting Wi-Fi somehow in the trailer. So having like a dongle with a, what's it called? A cell phone card inside of it. Because then it would be so nice that the learners, if they had phones with them, could log on and then maybe access some sort of online material or online survey. So it just depends on the network coverages in the area you're going. And then the second idea, which I've now forgotten. Oh, you said about taking the trailer with on the field trips to see specimens. Such a fun idea. Maybe we could look at factoring in a day of the field trip where actually then we go out to schools. And so the second and third year students and even the first years can get some experience with outreach and showing stuff to the students, actually factoring it into our undergrad field trips and even honors. So maybe just an idea to keep in mind. But well done, and we're very excited.
Thank you. What do the undergrads think of that idea before I volunteer them? Yeah. It's approval. Okay, it's good.
Yes, I just want to know, would it be possible for you to actually include maybe pseudo samples, like mimicking the original sample so that you can leave with the people you go to, just as a way for them to interact a bit more yeah.
Maybe with some things. I mean, we could maybe do that for some of the bigger like mineral specimens. We want to showcase the actual shape of it rather than the physical properties.
But your core seem to be fading, but we
But for
hadn't
things
got
that are
here.
dense, you
And
want
when
to
I got here, I discovered that the internet was offline.
I mean, we can have some pseudo samples. I think that's what we do for paleontology. We have pseudo samples, we have casts. But it's nice for them to feel, especially for ore. You so much you can tell by how the ore feels, how the different pigments come off of it. You know, the weight is important. Even like how it conducts, you can feel something that's very metal rich by how it draws heat out of your hand. There's a lot of sensory, like information you can get from actually holding something genuine.
Yeah, I'd like just to add to that, just from my experience working with large diamonds, like you can actually feel the difference between a diamond and, I mean, a piece of wax, because diamond conducts heat differently. So a diamond actually feels cold. The specific gravity is important, how heavy it is. So a diamond actually feels very different to a piece of glass or quartz. You can actually feel that it's a diamond. And so I think, okay, we're not going to have like 900 carat diamonds in our mobile museum, unfortunately. But yeah, I think having real specimens is important because you can actually, that is an educational thing as well. Like how heavy a specimen is, what it feels like, how it conducts electricity, etc.
But it would be nice to maybe find a way to get those glass cut diamonds, well, the replicas of famous diamonds. That would be lovely to have something like that.
Yes, but what I was trying to say is that we're not replacing the original samples. You bring the original samples for display and interaction, but you leave them something behind that actually resembles the original sample.
Oh, like a gift.
Yes, something like that. Yeah.
Would be nice. I mean, it's always fun to do things like casting and molding. So instead of maybe like casting and molding a fossil, we can make a cast of a different, like a rock with certain texture, and then we can make a medium. You can get like a rock plaster that it hardens to something that's similar to like a sandstone, a well-cemented sandstone. So we can pigment it, and they can make their own biffs. So we can actually make it into an activity, and then they take home whatever they create. So we can make rocks with them. I think that could be quite fun.
Okay, do we have any other questions? Any other suggestions from the students? Thank you for your input. It's been great. Anything else? Anyone else wants to mention? If not, then I'm just left to thank Robyn. I think the ideas are incredible. It's so important for geosciences in Southern Africa and for everyone here and everyone watching online. If you want to volunteer and get involved, Robyn is always open to people coming to help her in any way. It could be in our collections downstairs, in the mobile museum, in any way. And that's the way we spread the good news about geosciences to people that don't know. And that's one of our jobs as geoscientists. So thank you, Robyn, and all the best for when you present this overseas.
Thank you so much for coming.
Amazing.